All right, Going Yard softball fans, you asked and we delivered. Not only can you enjoy listening to interviews with some of the biggest names in softball, but you can now enjoy savings from the hottest softball apparel and merchandise store on the net. We are proud to announce our affiliation with Softball Lifestyle 101. You can now save 10% off of your entire order by entering the promo code GYP10 at checkout. That's shirts, hoodies, book bags, jewelry, and much, much more. Visit softballlifestyle101.com and remember to use the promo code GYP10 at checkout for 10% off, and you can find those links in our show notes in bio. Hey, what's going on, softball fans? This interview that we had today is absolutely incredible. It's so inspiring. We saw her story on ESPN and then found her on Instagram, and we've just been so amazed at how she's been able to go from birth to where she is today and go through all of the challenges that she had today. Obviously, we're talking to Kendall Burton. Make sure you listen to this whole episode. We got so much out of it.
This kind of interview is exactly why we kind of wanted to do a podcast, to dive into stories like this, to have people share their life experience and all that they go through to make themselves accomplished athletes, to make themselves accomplished human beings on and off the field, and the things that she's going to take with her for the rest of her life. And it's very inspiring. I hope you share this with somebody who needs a little pick-me-up or who's going through a tough time, because this will snap you kind of out of it and make you realize that what you're doing isn't so tough right now. It might not be so tough right now.
Exactly. Make sure you enjoy it, share it, promote it, and we'll talk to you at the end of the show. Hey, Kendall, thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. Yeah, we're very excited to have you on. I'm glad you were able to find some time for us, and we're very interested to dig into your story, and I think it'll help a lot of softball players, baseball players, coaches, the whole nine yards. Even if you're not an athlete, your story will help a lot of people. I love it.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Yes, Kendall, it's Tyler. Appreciate you taking the time to talk to us and our listeners today, and share some insight into your life, and help people realize that there's some amazing things that can be accomplished no matter what setbacks you have. That's for sure. So if we can, we normally start most of our interviews with like kind of that high school softball to high school to college softball transition. But for you, we want to go a little further back. And if you can, kind of talk about, the beginning as a child, and maybe some of the struggles and adversities you had to deal with at a younger age that maybe a lot of athletes at a young age don't have to deal with.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was born with a severe unilateral cleft lip and palate. And so by the time I was 11, I had 21 surgeries. And I found softball when I was 8, but I was doing sports like well before that. And, I danced and I hated every second of it. And then I did basketball and soccer and gymnastics, and just none of them stuck. But, when I was 8, my dad and I were walking out of Walmart, and there was just like a Missouri City softball league, and they're just like, "Do you want to sign up?" And my dad my dad played college baseball and a little bit in the majors and like the minor leagues, and he didn't even realize that softball was a thing. I mean, he had no idea. And then we signed up, and I never turned back. And it was certainly because I was having so many surgeries as a young kid. I was having surgeries a lot, but sports was a way for me to just kind of have this huge bubble of confidence. I kind of have expressed it as almost like a superpower. When I was on the field playing, it was kind of like my big outlet and my big shield of just something else other than having to deal with the next time I go to the doctor and what's the next surgery going to be and how long will I be out for. And it was just a huge way to just kind of get totally away from that aspect of my life, for me and my family.
Mm. Now, real quick, Kendall, did you have the surgeries, between seasons, or did you just kind of have to have them as they came? And did you just approach them one by one, I guess, or was it something you knew you had this done, which meant in 3 months you're going to have this done? I mean, what was that process like And what was the mental process like as a child dealing with some of that?
So when I was a little kid, like toddler, it was kind of like, from what there's like, obviously there's many surgeries I don't remember, but from what I know, like from my parents have told me, it's kind of like when I was a little kid, I had a lot of surgeries like in a small amount of time because your face is changing like very rapidly and you're constantly growing. And so it was kind of like a timetable. You had these consoles like once or twice a year, and like the doctor would tell you like, okay, well, this is the next thing. And then it would kind of ask you like, do you want more done? Do you want less done? Or like, and then they would try and work around your schedule. But there was kind of like a timetable of like, well, in order to like keep in the right track, we need to get these certain things done. But I was lucky that, my surgeon, like he knew, I was very close with him and my family was too. And he knew that softball had become a very big part of my life very early on. So we definitely worked around it as much as we could. It was more of like, I would have a surgery like right at the in the summer, like right after season or like during Christmas, Thanksgiving. I would try and have surgeries a lot then because that was when softball season wasn't as hot and heavy. But it was kind of like when everyone was just kind of hanging out and like having leisure time, I was, like putting my body through, I had to recover and I was going through stuff and then I had to get back from that. And there was never like a leisure point for me. But I guess like as a little kid, I kind of didn't think that I thought it was cool that I was having all these surgeries. Like that sounds crazy, but like when you're a kid and you're like, when you're different and you're like a young age, it's like, it's cool. It's like, well, I have this and this is what I have to do. And like, do you know what this is? Like, it's kind of like little kids do that.
Yeah.
And and so I didn't think anything of it because that was what I grew up that way. I grew up like, well, you have these surgeries and my parents, it was just kind of like my routine. And I guess like it didn't hit me till about middle school was when I started really having that like self-conscious type of like not feeling pretty enough. And like all of my friends were like, they got braces, but then they were getting them off. And then I had to have like extensive dental work and all this stuff because it wasn't just this like easy peasy like situation of just like get braces, get them off, and you have like amazing teeth. It was like, we have to do this, and then you have to have an expander, and then you have to have another device in your mouth. And it was just kind of like, I started to feel like, oh, you're not like, you don't have like the normal life like all of your friends do. And honestly, I really put all of it into softball. Like everything that was just like really hard and taxing emotionally and physically, like I just put all of that passion or frustration or just all of that energy, I put it into softball because I just love the sport so much.
Well, that definitely goes to show because, I was looking on just reading about your story. I saw that, at eighth grade, 14 years old, you were playing tournament ball with 18-year-olds, and you were really going at it. So obviously you used it to use softball to your advantage, to kind of like put everything that you had built up into that. And it obviously shows. So I thought that was pretty awesome.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Now let's take. All right, so you played high school softball. Can you talk about that and then the transition to go to UTSA and how you let us know how you ultimately decided to go there and the difficulties that kind of transpired around that time as well.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So I always knew I wanted to play college softball. It was kind of like but everyone hits that point. I feel like whether it's middle school or like right in their freshman year when they realize like the work that, it takes to actually get to be a like D1 athlete. And so I kind of had that like moment in eighth grade and I was like, oh my gosh, there's like a lot of work that goes into this. Like I need to like really step up my game. And then I started realizing it wasn't that I was behind, but it was just that like, I just wasn't, because of all my surgeries, I just wasn't like growing in strength in certain aspects, like as everyone else was. And I didn't really realize this, but like my parents did. Right. And so it was kind of like, at a young age, I like didn't think I was good enough to play in like a really big school, like in the SEC or the Pac-12 or the Big 12. I mean, I just had this like, well, I just want to go to a small school in Texas because I just want to play. That was kind of like all I want to do was play, and I want to have the opportunity to play. And so around my sophomore year, I had some, I wouldn't say I didn't have any offers yet, but I had some schools in Texas, like smaller schools in Texas that were very much looking at me, and they were like, "We really want you to like in the fall of your junior year, like come out for a visit, like an official visit. Like we really want to offer you a scholarship." And then I had this jaw realignment surgery where they broke my jaw and they put it back into place, like where not back into place, but where it needed to be essentially. Right. And I came back from like my surgery, and like all the 4 schools that I was like seriously talking to just totally like cold turkey, wasn't even responding to me, wasn't calling me back. I mean, just completely done. I mean, it was like, and then finally like 2 of them told me like, we had this big surgery. We don't know what kind of athlete you're going to be when you come back from it. Like we're looking at other athletes now. And then the other schools were like, well, you know, you were out and we found someone else to take the place. And so then I was almost in this like panic mode, and it was just like, wow, you know, I was a junior and majority of all my friends had already committed. Like I was behind for the people I was surrounded by. And I was just like, wow, my gosh, you know, and I always really liked UTSA because I loved the coach there, Coach Lahotek. And well, she was the coach at the time. And she actually told me right before my jaw surgery that she would only offer me a walk-on spot because she didn't think that I would be able to hit in Conference USA. But then I actually made this, I kind of like a recruiting video from like me hitting, throwing, like all that kind of stuff. And I sent it to her, and actually my dad did. I like wanted nothing to do with her because I was like almost embarrassed that I was told that, right? But my dad sent it to her, and then next thing I know is she's like come up for a visit, and it was just kind of like, I just had a really good feeling like I needed to be there. And so I committed there, and Coach Lahotek actually left UTSA before I got to the school, but that's kind of how my path of getting to UTSA happened.
Now, once you got there, I thought it was a very unique thing. You played like one game. It was like after your first game, you had some more challenges that happened right after that. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So got to school with my fall semester, my freshman year, and we had just started fall ball because, you know, you have, you know, a certain amount of games in the fall season in softball. And I actually, that day, I was traveling back from my grandfather's funeral, and my dad had driven me back from Beaumont, Texas. And in my dorm room that night, I suffered an acute ischemic stroke. So, and what that is, essentially, it was a lack of oxygen to a certain portion of my brain for an extended period of time. And I was physically capable. I mean, my neurologist, you know, the days after the stroke, when I was in the hospital for about 5 days, you know, he said, you could go run a marathon tomorrow if you really wanted to. Like, it's unbelievable that your body's fine. But my speech and my memory and all of my cognitive skills, so like having a conversation, reading and writing, like even texting, it was kind of like damaged. And so I had to, you know, withdraw from all my classes. And it was kind of like the second that he said that, you know, and everybody had these, like, I could just feel everyone feeling like what is going to happen? Is she going to go back to school? Is she going to be able to play softball ever again? Like, and it was, for me, I was just like, okay, so this horrible thing happened. Now what? Like, what is the next step? Like, how I can't just like, I just can't sit around and just wait and just like, or feel like really bad. And because I need people around me. So I refused to go back to Houston, where I'm originally from, with my parents, because I just wanted to be around the team. I wanted to be around people. I wanted to be around people who are like competing for something, because, you know, they were all competing for something like on the field, you know, they wanted a spot, and I was just competing to be able to send a text message that like makes sense to my friends and like make like have a conversation with my friends. But it was kind of like I had a really good sense of humor about it, and I am so incredibly lucky that the people around me like didn't judge me for like wanting to make jokes about the fact that like everything that came out of my mouth like made no sense, and it was like a game of charades like constantly. But that like the girls at UTSA, my coaches, they really bought into the fact of like that's how I wanted to handle it, and that's how I was going to get through it. And so I went to speech therapy and cognitive therapy for about 4 months, and I ended up being able to start in the spring of 2015 when I had my stroke in the fall of 2014.
Wow, that is incredible. I mean, did you continue to, you know, work out softball wise in the middle of doing the speech therapy and all that cognitive therapy over that winter to get ready for the spring?
So actually, my neurologist said, he told me, he was like, you go run a marathon. But in all actuality, it was very hard to work out because my brain was just so tired. I mean, I had a giant brain injury, right? So it was like, I would try like, I went to weights every day. I went to like all of the conditioning, and I went to the practice and stuff, but I didn't really participate. I tried really hard. You know, I would try and get like 1 or 2 reps in the conditioning, but for about like 3 months, 2 months, I wasn't able to do anything because my head would just hurt so bad. And then I would be so tired. I mean, if I had a 20-minute conversation with somebody, I needed like an hour nap just because my brain was like working overtime. So to be honest with you, I didn't really get back into full force, like softball and working out until I left for winter break in December.
And then how did you feel once you started doing that? Did it all kind of just come back naturally, or did you have to kind of retrain the muscles again? I mean, you know, you talk about the mental fatigue, but obviously your body, you know, has probably, you know, atrophied a little bit as well, I guess, through some of that downtime, right?
You know, I don't remember it. I remember being obviously like out of shape, but I don't remember having these moments of like, I don't remember how to hit or like throw or I don't remember being like unbelievably fatigued. And I think that I probably was, but I think I just had like this big like determination of like, you can do it. Like you just gotta, you gotta push through it all. And I remember having this one vivid conversation with my dad on the phone one day. And I was about to come back for a Christmas break, and I just finally withdrew from my classes. I was definitely being a little bit hesitant to do that just because I didn't want to, for me personally, I didn't want to kind of like give up on it, even though I truly couldn't go to school. I mean, there was no shot. But I remember telling him like, like, Dad, what if I do all this work? Like, what if it doesn't work out? Like, what am I going to do? And I remember having this conversation with him, and he was like, Kendall, you're the hardest worker I know. Like, if you do all the work, you're going to do it. I know you're going to do it. And he was like, I don't think that the work that you put in, you're not going to get something out of it. And after that conversation, I think I just got like an extra like motivation, and I don't remember being unbelievably fatigued. And even if I was, I'm sure I thought it was like a good feeling. I was like, oh, thank God I haven't felt this way in a while, like for my body at least. So I guess long story short, no, I think everything kind of came back really naturally, like body wise.
Now, I have to ask this kind of in a way. I mean, because being a teenage girl, a young girl, it's not an easy world to live in with social media and all these things in life. Did you ever have a why me moment through the course of all of this to kind of, why is this happening to me? Why do I don't deserve this? Like, if you did, how did that come about, and how did you work through it?
Excuse me. I definitely had a lot of why me moments for my birth defect. I definitely remember being like a younger kid, and especially in high school, having these why me moments. And I think that I started having to really look at myself with the fact that I'm not dying, and this is a crappy circumstance, and it's not fair, but like there's so many things in life that like they're not fair to so many other people. And, you know, I have facial deformities, but I'm still able to go do whatever I want every single day. You know, it's like there's so many people who have struggles well beyond something of that nature, to where they really can't go play sports, or they can't, like, they're battling cancer, like they're fighting for their life. And so I think it was kind of like I had to have this big gratitude moment and like be okay with my circumstance and like what my life looked like, because it looked different than others. And so I had a lot of why me moments when I was younger with the whole, like, my having a cleft. But with the stroke, this sounds like I'm just being this like huge rock star, but I had my assistant coach ask me if I was asking myself that after I had my stroke. And of course, like, my answer took like 5 minutes, but basically what I told her, I was like, I'd rather be me, because I've already been through the ringer with certain other, like, all these surgeries and stuff. Like, I know how to get through something like this. I'm glad it was me and not like one of my teammates who hasn't had like a struggle and like their self-identity and their self-worth, and like, just because, and I to this day, like, I stick by that, because it's like, I already had been through like some traumatic things. And so I don't ask why me with me having a stroke. I've never asked myself that within that aspect.
Wow, that's amazing. Just to kind of change your perspective, especially, you know, in high school, and then, you know, your late teens going into your early 20s, and you know, with all that, it must take a lot for you to get to that point where you're able to just say, hey, you know what, I've gone through all this, I can handle it. And it's better that I handle it than someone that hasn't had to deal with these struggles before. So I think that's beautiful and amazing perspective at such a young age.
Thank you.
Yep. Now, you play a couple seasons at UTSA. You then transfer to Oklahoma State, which is quite amazing considering your recent experiences and the struggles you went through. But what happens right after that?
Once I got to Oklahoma State?
Yeah.
So when I got to Oklahoma State, moved to Stillwater, got there, and, you know, the doctors, he looked at my medical history and he was like, well, I want to do some more extensive tests. And, you know, I was like, that's fine. They're going to come back clean. You know, it's going to be, you're going to see some dead brain cells, but like who has, like, what brain doesn't look like that after they had a stroke, you know? So, and he made me go through all these tests, and I had all these heart tests done too. And my heart came back, you know, 100%, looked great. Nothing was wrong with my MRI scans, my CT scans on my head. And they, you know, they strung me along for about a month and a half. And they ended up telling me, you know, we're not going to clear you medically. Like the university doctor said, like, I'm not going to put my stamp of approval for you to play for this university in case something like this happens again, because you're a liability. You're a risk for us. And I mean, I had been going to every practice, all the weights at 5 a.m. I mean, I was literally a part of the team, but I wasn't able to do anything. So I was all like waiting for this response from this guy. You know, I was doing all the right things, but I wasn't actually able to participate in sports like at all. And so after that, when he told me the first time, no, I was like, okay, well, this sucks, but I didn't go through all the other stuff, and I didn't just like make a whole entire like life change to better my career and my life and my education, you know, to just like say, oh, I'm done, you know. So I went and tried to seek out other universities so I could go transfer and play somewhere else. And I want to say at least like, for sure, like 8 universities telling me no. You know, after looking at my medical history, the trainers were just like, we're really sorry. Like, no, this isn't going to happen. And so I definitely had like a discouraging moment then, because it was in the middle of the fall semester, and I was just like, what am I going to do? You know, I was at UTSA, I was starting, I had friends, my family was able to go to every game because I only lived like 3 hours away. You know, I just uprooted my whole life, and I had to have this like big discussion with myself, like, you know, you made this decision, but you might end up having to hang up your cleats. But then, you know, my parents like wrote this very lengthy, extravagant email to basically like everyone at Oklahoma State. I mean, I'm talking like they sent it to just everybody, like copied a bunch of people, because they're just like, we're not going down without a fight. Like, it's not, they shouldn't be telling you can't play for them because you had a neurologist who had literally cleared you to play at another university for 2 years, you know? And he never even consulted my neurologist, by the way, which is a whole nother thing. Mm-hmm. And then they told me, well, come back. We're going to get this squared away. You're for sure going to get cleared. So I go back to practice. I go to all the games, you know, weights, everything, just for them to tell me about a week later, like, we dropped the ball again. We're really sorry. You're not playing for Oklahoma State ever.
Wow.
Unbelievable.
So,
wow.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you deal with that not once but twice? I mean, that's unbelievable to me.
You know, the first time I handled it very well. Yeah. I told my parents, like, because, you know, I'm not a parent, but watching my parents struggle with me being so far away and knowing that, like, there is absolutely nothing they can do to fix it. I mean, my parents have been dealing with that since I was born, you know, like they can only do so much. And I feel like when I first found out the first time that I wasn't going to be able to play at Oklahoma State, all I want to do is just tell my parents, like, don't worry, I'm going to find somewhere to play. And, you know, and it was kind of like, they had the same attitude as I did. They were like, we're not going to let them take away your career. You know, we all were kind of on the same page. And the second time around, I was very skeptical. You know, my parents were a lot more optimistic about me being able to play there because, you know, they spent a lot of time into this email and like trying to get it to the right people in the right hands. And I was very skeptical and I didn't really believe in it. And I honestly, I didn't even want to play for Oklahoma State at that point. And it wasn't because I didn't love the girls, because I was obviously bonding with them. I was living with them. I was seeing them every day. And I love the coaching staff, but it was like, I'm over it. Yeah, that's kind of how I felt. I was like, I don't want to play for this university that's already done this so many times. And I didn't think that it was going to work out. In my gut, I was like, they're going to tell me no again. Like, I'm wasting time coming back, like not talking to other schools. I'm wasting time not like seeking out other universities for me to be able to play. And I turned out, you know, I was right. And but like, the second time, I think it was more of like, how am I mean, because I'm talking like, it was like maybe 2 weeks before Thanksgiving when they told me this. So I was almost done with the whole semester and I still had nowhere to play. So I think it was more of like the time factor the second time of being like, what now?
Now, I have one question before we kind of move on a little bit, because I kind of deal with this a little bit. I work at a small Division III school, and we have athletes that transfer in and transfer out. How academically did you manage through this, and how did transferring from one school to another school, and then possibly all of that? How did that work out for you academically and what you were studying and staying on course to kind of graduate on time per se?
So I essentially, whenever I came back from my stroke, I was taking, I don't want to say like easy classes, but, all the classes that were absolutely the least taxing on your mind, So I was taking like some online classes here, like electives and, like your basic course classes. Like I was taking all of those ever since my stroke, because I was trying to gradually get back into just school, because school was, really hard for me for like 2.5 years. I could not remember a thing. It was just really tough on me in general. And so I had to take a 5th year. I graduate in a month in May. So, and even though all of my credits transferred, I got very lucky. There are so many students I know that transfer and they lose half of the stuff they've already done. And I'm just really lucky. The fact that, I don't want to say lucky that I had a stroke, but I was taking classes that were able to transfer to other schools. And then the classes I took at Oklahoma State, I just got lucky with what I chose, and it actually transferred over to Georgia. So I really feel for those students who transfer and they're way behind than they thought they were going to be.
Yeah, no, thanks for touching on that, honestly.
Yeah. And now let's talk about Georgia. You read you made a visit to Georgia. You had some friends that played over there, and you're cleared. But I wanted to know, like, what made you say, this is where I want to play? I mean, you had other schools that were interested in you. What was it about the Bulldogs, the whole atmosphere that made you say, this is it, I'm in?
So I got there. I was there for a total of like maybe 36 hours, I think. I mean, I wasn't there for long, but I got in. My dad and I met up at the airport, and we drove into Athens, and they met us at the field, like the coaching staff, and then we were going to go to dinner right after. And they had all the lights on and the trees. I don't know if you've ever seen a picture of the Georgia Softball Stadium, but the trees just were so big and they were still lush. And I was looking at the stands and I was just like, wow, like people play on this field. I love UTSA, got me where I am today, but our field never looked like that. I remember stepping foot on the field, just having this like aha moment, just being like, wow, like I feel something being on this field. And then just the whole next day, like everyone I met, the trainer, the coaching staff, just the players that I did meet, and then like seeing Courtney and Sydney again with my friends. So I literally started playing with them when I was 8. So, I mean, that was special in itself. And it was just, you just get that vibe. And like everyone says that moment, like when you know. And I just was kind of sick and tired of overthinking things. And it was like, I know that this is where I want to play. I know I want to play for these two coaches. I know I want to play on this field. I want to have an opportunity to play in the best conference in the country for softball. I'm in. I'm going to do it. I'm not going to overthink this. Like, this is exactly where I'm meant to be.
Now, two things here that I want you to kind of touch on if you can. One, what was their medical process like for you compared to, I guess, the tribulations that you went through with Oklahoma State? What was their medical evaluation for you like? And then kind of what was it like to kind of look back at your one coach and say, I can hit. I'm going to go play in the SEC, like you just said, the toughest division in college softball, arguably with the Pac-12. You're going to go play with the big dogs, essentially, from just a short time ago to where you were told you weren't even going to hit. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, what a transformation, honestly.
So at Georgia, my neurologist here, Dr. Pitts, he basically just said my visit here was honestly that whole morning, the morning of, I was in the hospital all morning because all he wanted to do was have his own scans. He didn't want to see things from like other hospitals, and what he wanted to see exactly what my brain looked like now. And so I had a CT scan, and he wanted to make sure, my vessels, like if the blood was going where it needed to be. And that's really all he wanted. He wanted me to do that. And he looked at it. And while I was kind of visiting the student athlete center, Rankin, like where academics kind of happen for tutoring and all that stuff, he called my coach saying like, she's good to go. And that moment, my dad was just so happy. Like he was like outside, like arms raised. He was just like, yes, he was like so excited. And it was like a really cool moment for sure. But so that's all really Georgia wanted from me. They just kind of wanted their own scans just to say like, okay, yeah, you're right. You are healthy. You're not lying, So, and then what was the other question? Sorry, I got like off track.
You were right on track. I just kind of asked two totally different questions. But you went from a player being told just a few years ago that you weren't even going to hit in a lineup, basically, and be a defensive player only, probably do some base running type of stuff, to a player going to play in arguably the toughest conference in all of college softball, year after year. And what was that feeling like, knowing that you kind of achieved a goal that many didn't even believe that you probably had, even some of the coaches that you had?
I I don't even know. I wish I had a better answer to that. I think it was just the fact that, like, when she told me that, I was shocked. And the problem is she loved me so much. Like, I had a good relationship with this woman. I've only met her like a couple of times but I was like, I was a tiny person. I'm still small. But when she said that, I was just like, well, that's not true, but fine. I'll go find someone else who does think I'm capable. And then when I got to Conference USA, I mean, I was runner up for freshman of the year. I was second team all conference. I was, I had like 8 home runs. I was like tied 8th in the nation for triples. I mean, I did my job. I definitely came out and I was like, despite everything. And being able to play at Georgia in the SEC, I mean, I'm not even kidding. Like, when I was younger, I really never thought I was able and capable and good enough to play at that caliber. And I was just excited to see what I was going to learn and how much better I was going to get by being surrounded by coaches like Coach Lou and Coach Tony, who, I mean, I learned more about the game in 2 seasons than I have learned in my entire life, just being at Georgia alone.
Right. I'm curious. Now, you also had issues with post-stroke seizures, correct? Now, you kind of dealt with that in Georgia, right?
Yeah, I did. So I did deal with it at UTSA, and honestly, it was just normal. When it first happened to me, I was like in a game and I was like so confused. I was like, what? Because my post-stroke seizures, it's not like a regular seizure that everyone thinks of. It's essentially all it is for me is that I have symptoms of it, like it feeling like I'm having a stroke, but I'm not having a stroke. So that's like what it looks like for me. And, I went to my neurologist and he was like, this is normal. Like, every stroke patient has these. It's just like kind of like your dead brain cells, like going the wrong direction instead of the right one.
Gotcha.
Essentially, it's kind of like 2 pathways instead of just one. And I had the worst one I'd ever had when I was at Georgia. We were in a tournament in California, and I think it was just because I had just been through so much. I mean, because transferring alone is so much tougher than people lead it on to be. I mean, you're meeting new people, you're trying to make new friends. It's a whole different place. It's mentally really tough. And I think that I was going. All I wanted to do was play. And then I got the starting spot, and then I did poorly, and I got taken out of the lineup. And then I think it just kind of all came at me at one point. Like, it hit me like a train, honestly. And I after that post-stroke seizure, I did not think I was ever going to step foot on the field, because I thought that I was going to go back to Athens and the neurologist was going to be like, after this incident, I don't think we're going to be able to clear you again, and I had a mental conversation with myself, at one of the games, because I stayed the night in the hospital in California and I attended the game the next day, that evening. And I remember like sitting on the bucket, like watching all of my new teammates play. And I was like, Kendall, if you get back to Athens and they tell you can't play anymore, you can't say you didn't do all you could. I mean, you fought so hard to do everything you possibly could to play the sport. And that's like, you can't take that away from yourself, and it's totally okay if you don't play anymore. And I got back to Athens, and my neurologist is just like super chill about it. He was like, yeah, this happens. We're going to get you on some megs, actually. Like, there's a new drug. It's like really low dosage. I think it'll be great for you. Like, just like nonchalant, like no problem. And like, meanwhile, me and my family are like having this like unspoken conversation about how I'm never going to play softball again. So it was just kind of like, it was just really crazy. And I think I was just being a pessimist, because it was like everything else that had happened at OSU, from like doctors straight up telling me like, you'll never be a college athlete again, to having this one guy who was just being like, yeah, you'll be fine. It is what it is. It sucks, but we'll get you through it. So
that's awesome.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Now, I do want to have you bring up a little bit about the experiences of going through, the SEC tournament, getting to play at the College World Series, what that's like, and that sense of accomplishment as a female athlete.
I can't even begin to explain how amazing it was. I And it's, I always say this to people because it's so true. And it's, you get to those moments. Like when I was at the College World Series, I remember being like, why aren't you more excited, Kendall? Like, what's wrong with you? And it wasn't like I wasn't excited. I was just so content. I didn't feel this like overwhelming sense of like, whoa, you know what I mean? And after some like just talking to a bunch of people and like having like I guess conversations with myself, it was like, it's because, it was all about the journey, not the destination. And it was like everything that led me up to that moment, it was like, that is exactly where I was supposed to end my career. Like with like Crew 22 of the Georgia Bulldogs, like with those particular girls, like that is exactly where you were meant to be. That's why all of this happened. That's why you went through all of this, like being on that stage and just like stage on the field. And it was just unexplainable because it was just like you work so hard for something like that. I mean, as an individual, as a unit, as a team with your coaches, I mean, it's like there's so much that goes into it. And it was just like being able to watch like the whole entire team and myself be able to compete at that level. It's just this like, it's something you just can't explain. And it's like you cherish it more than anything.
That's awesome. That's such an awesome story. And, you go through so much and you had all that happen to you from birth all the way up, all the struggles in college. And then to get to that point, it's just like, it's got to be surreal. But at the same time, like you said, you were content. Like it was just this feeling like this all makes sense. This is the reason why it happened. I'm stronger now and I'm here, so I thought that was cool.
Thank you.
Yep. And, you're also working on, there's a book in the works. You also speak to people all over the country about the challenges you faced. What are some of the overarching messages of your talks and also of your book?
So for my talks, honestly, my biggest message, what I want the audience to take away from it, whether you're an athlete or you're just, whatever you're doing in life, is that like we all have this definition of resilience, and it's like we all, it's just being tough, right? And just recovering quickly from like a really bad circumstance. But I feel like the word resilience stems so much further than that, and there's such a bigger meaning. And I think that everybody's definition looks a little different. And so I kind of go through like my story and I tell them what my definition of resilience is because of what I went through. And I want them to kind of realize that like their story matters, and not everybody's story is going to look the same. Everyone's going to have different trials and situations, and some are going to go through things that are tougher than others. I mean, like I genuinely don't think that some of the stuff I've been through is not even close to as bad as some other things that other people are struggling with like today or have in the past. But at the same time, it's like my story matters and I was able to get through it, and it doesn't matter what you're going through. You still have resilience within you. Like whether it's just getting through the fact of like not being an athlete anymore or, surviving cancer. I mean, it can be as like, I guess like severe or less severe as you want it to be. So
it's got to be rewarding, no matter what. I mean, because you went back and I think I saw you talk to your high school, right?
Oh, it wasn't my high school.
Oh, I thought it was. I'm sorry.
Yeah, but I was asked to go speak at like a award ceremony for an athletic, like a middle school and their high school.
And what are some of the questions that those, I guess you get to do a little like meet and greet maybe afterwards. What are some of the questions that people maybe bring up to you, or what do they say afterwards?
The biggest question I get is why? Why did you do it? Like why did you keep going? Like how did you do it? And for a long time I didn't know how to answer that question, because when you're doing something, you just do it, right? You're not really like over analyzing why you're doing it and what you're doing. You know what I mean? It's kind of like you don't really understand your why until kind of halfway through or afterwards. And my answer to that question is the fact that I loved softball more than like I've loved anything else. And it's because softball gave me more than just something to do. It gave me family. It gave me confidence. It gave me work ethic. It gave me a sense of community. It gave me things that I can't, like, I couldn't get from, I could get from other places, but I couldn't, I mean, it was one source. And it was the love and passion I had for the sport and the people that I was giving from the sport. And that's how I did it all.
Now, now that you're not playing, let's kind of dive in a little bit to a little bit of the coaching and work you're doing at some of the clinics with the package deal. How did that opportunity come about, and what are some of the things you're doing with them?
So the opportunity actually came about because, so Amanda Scarborough was kind of basically the reason the ESPN article was even written about me, because she found out about my story, interviewed me when they came, like ESPN came to Georgia to do like media day, and heard about my story. Wayne, who was the writer of the article, he asked Amanda and Jen, I believe, Amanda and Jen, you know, what are some stories I want to do a softball feature? And I was one of the stories that they offered, and he chose mine. And then after the article was written, you know, I kept up with Amanda some, and she asked me, I found her the package deal, told me all about it. And she was like, was this something you'd be interested in? And I was like, yes, absolutely. Like, of course I want to impact young girls like all around the country, like not even just within softball, but within life. I mean, it extends so much farther through things, just like on the field surface things. And so now I just, I attend the clinics I'm asked to attend, and the team that I'm a part of, like our roster is like, it's a whole nother sense of team that I've been really struggling with the fact of not being on a team and not seeing people every single day, but being a part of the package deal with the founders, Morgan, Jen, and Amanda, and then the entire roster. It's just, we're doing something so much bigger than, we can even imagine. Like, even when we don't think so, or we don't understand it, it's like we're really making an impact, and it's just kind of incredible to be a part of something like that.
I bet. I wanted to get your thoughts on this, just because we always ask people, if you could go back and talk to your teenage self, what would you tell yourself? But I want to ask you and go back a little bit further. If you could tell your 6, 7, 8, 9-year-old, 10-year-old self anything, what would it be?
Just not to take it too seriously, because at the end of the day, it's supposed to be really fun. And like, even life in general, it's supposed to be fun. If you're not having a good time, then, what are you doing it for? And I think that for a long time, I was always trying to reach certain goals, like, and just be like perfect, because I felt like I was so imperfect in other aspects of my life because of the things I was going through and the surgeries and just like feeling insecure and stuff. But, in all actuality, it's like, that stuff only goes so far. And it's just like, not to take it all too seriously, because at some point it's supposed to be fun. Like, no matter what you're doing, it's supposed to give you like fuel of like just joy.
No, that's great. I love it. I mean, we have 10-year-old daughters, so we always love that kind of question. The answers we get as being dads, and things that we can kind of share with them, and advice and knowledge. Because it's not easy living in this world as a young girl with social media and the pressures of school and sports and all of that stuff. So it's always interesting to see what people have to say that they would tell themselves to do again.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, as we wind down here on the podcast interview, was there any topics maybe that we didn't bring up that maybe you wanted to talk a little bit more about?
Oh man, I feel like we really covered a lot. I talked a lot. I know that for sure, but I don't think so. I really think that y'all covered everything really nicely.
Awesome. Now, what are some of your goals within the next 3 to 5 years with the package deal, with your speaking? Also, if you could also talk about when you think the book might be coming out, or is there a goal for that?
Yeah, so the book is kind of my biggest goal right now. And I think, part of that is because when I was sitting in the hospital bed after my stroke, like with everything coming out of my mouth just being like so wrong and like not really being able to communicate with people, I had that was the first time I had the idea for the book. I remember just sitting there being like, I want to write about this. Like, I want to write about this experience because this is unreal. The fact that I can't communicate with anybody right now. Like, this is crazy. And, you know, because of the ESPN article, from that, I got a book agent out of it. And so, you know, I've written things, you know, over the years, and it's all out of order and, you know, totally not in book ready or anything. But, you know, I talked to my book agent about the beginning of like January, and I told her, I was like, listen, the second I'm done with school, you know, I want to make a schedule. I want to make an entire, you know, I want like to be told exactly when certain things are due and stuff, because that's like how I work. I mean, what athlete doesn't work that way? But so that's really my biggest goal right now, is to just write the book. I just want to make it like an experience. I want people to just like be able to relate regardless of like what they're going through. And I really want to get into motivational speaking, obviously, just because I want to share my story, just because if it could change anyone's life, it can touch somebody, then, you know, I'm doing my job. And so those are my two main goals for life, is just to impact others and, you know, not tell them like, oh, this is exactly how you're supposed to do it and get through it. Like, there's no blueprint, right? But people like to feel acknowledged, and people like to know that they're not alone. And I feel like that's all I want to do for people. And with the package deal, I hope that I just keep working with them for as long as I possibly can. You know, it's a great community to be around. It's a great, like, they empower me, and I want to say I empower them. And so it's just, I want to work with them, like, and stay on for as long as I can.
That's awesome. I mean, I think you can, with all you've overcame, I think you can achieve those goals for sure. And
Thank you. I appreciate
the
that.
impact that you can make and you've already made is impressive, honestly, to me.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
One question we kind of like to ask people a little bit is, who would you recommend the Going Yard podcast reach out to for an interview, whether it's a player, a coach, a former player coach? Who do you think would have a great, who has great knowledge or another great story that people should hear more about? Because obviously we know you've kind of been around the country a little bit. You've met so many people. Do you think there'd be anybody out there that our listeners would want to hear more about?
You know, I know that y'all are like a baseball, softball podcast and stuff. And I guess I'm saying this because I just saw him, but I just saw, you know, Coach Tony Baldwin. He's the assistant coach at Georgia. And I learned so much from him. And I learned a lot from Coach Lou too. Like, don't get me wrong. She like showed me what exuding confidence, what that looked like. But he is really good with his words. And I love when he shares stories about what he's doing and what he did. And, you know, his story is really interesting when he played college baseball, and then he got away from the sport and then was coaching and then got into softball. And so his story is really interesting, I believe. So and if he has the time, I hope that, you know, he'd be able to do something like that. But because, you know, they're in season right now.
Yeah.
But I certainly think that he would be a great person to talk to.
Excellent. We will do our best to reach out to him. I know it's sometimes it's tough with college people that are in the college sports part of it, just because we have to reach out to different people to get in order to talk to them. But we are going to try our best.
That's awesome. I hope that it works out.
Yeah. Where can people find you online with social media, websites, anything you got going on?
Yeah, okay, so on Instagram, I am Kenny Grace, Keni Grace, all one word. On Facebook, I'm Kendall Grace Burton. On Twitter, I think I'm Kendall G. Burton. I'm trying to get into Twitter more. Never been very good at it. All I do is retweet stuff, but I'm trying to get better at that.
Same.
I just kind of finished my website, and it's called The Toughest Out. And I'm still working on it. I want to launch it, so everybody can know about it, but I'm still working out some kinks, but it's live, it's public. Anyone can go on it now and reach out to me if they'd like to. And so that's basically where you can find me.
I love the name of that.
That is really
out.
good.
That is awesome.
Yeah, Wayne is the first person to call me the toughest out because of the ESPN article he wrote, and when I started, like, you know, you have to think about how you're going to brand yourself, right?
Yeah.
When you want to, like, speak. And I asked him, I was like, so, you know, can I use this? Because this is, like, it's kind of the best thing ever that you said. And he was like, yes, please. And so now I'm just totally branding myself as the toughest out.
Makes sense.
That is
I love
awesome.
it. Awesome. Well, Kendall, we got one more question for you, and I'd love to ask this question just because it digs deeper past the softball story and experience. If you had one at bat in the 2020 Olympics, what song would you choose as your walk-up song to the plate?
I would use the last walk-up song I ever had, and it would be Icon by Jaden Smith. And it's just solely because it just gave me, like, I loved listening to it. Like, I always listened to it on the way to the field. I actually had them change it, like, in the middle of the season last year because it wasn't my original walk-up song. And I just, you know, walk-up songs are all about what gets you going and gets you hype and ready. And so that would definitely be my song.
That is awesome. Wonderful. Well, we enjoyed this time with you, and your story is absolutely inspiring, and I know it'll inspire some of our listeners out there all over the world. And we just appreciate you taking the time to talk to us today, and we wish you the best of luck in everything you're doing, and look forward to the book coming out and the website, all whole 9 yards.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed this, and I hope I didn't talk too much, but thank you so much for having me on this podcast.
Yeah, no, Kendall, appreciate your time, and your inspiration's amazing. And if you're ever in the Mid-Atlantic area, please let us know. We'd love to catch up and meet you, and then take your story in person, honestly, and hear it all over again. It would something I could listen to more than once, that's for sure. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you. I will definitely keep in touch. No worries.
All right. Well, you have a good weekend.
Thank you. You too.
Yep, bye. I told you it would be the most inspirational thing you've ever heard. I could listen to that story over and over again, and her book is going to be amazing. Make sure you guys are looking for that, and if she's going to be talking anywhere where you are, find a way to get there. And I can't wait to meet her in person and hear more.
The toughest out.
The toughest out.
How great is that? I mean, that is fantastic, honestly. I mean, I wish I could steal it from her, but that would be wrong. So, a great story, great person, and honestly, I look forward to seeing all that she does in the future with not only her story, but everything else, because she's going to be successful in everything she's overcame, that's for sure.
Yeah, and the one thing I forgot to say when we were recording, but I got to say to her off air, is just a shout out to her parents. I mean, for everything that they had gone through as parents. I mean, I had said, you know, my son broke his leg, and I thought it was the end of the world. But the fact that even though their daughter was going through all of this, they kept getting her out there and trying new things with sports and dance and all that stuff. And they didn't keep her in a bubble. And I think that's so amazing. So shout out to the parents. I'd love to get them on the show as well. I think we're going to try to make that happen to kind of get the parents' perspective. And, you know, Dad played baseball with the Yankees in the minor league organization. So that should be pretty awesome. So I'm looking forward to it. As always, make sure you follow us on all social media at Going Yard Podcast and on Twitter at GY Podcast.
Yes, like, subscribe, download on iTunes, SoundCloud, Podbean, Google Play. Leave us a 5-star review if you could. That way we can climb those podcast rankings. Check out our website, goingyardpodcast.com. You'll find all of our social media accounts on there as well, and you'll find all of our previous episodes if you enjoyed this one.
Yeah, and also if you like what we're doing and you want to help support it, which would be fantastic on the softball side, check out our Patreon. You can go to patreon.com/goingyardpodcast, and you can support us in many different ways. That would be greatly appreciated. We love what you fans are doing for us, and it makes it easier for us to come back every single week and do this. And that would just be another level of support that would be greatly appreciated. But you don't have to. But thank you so much for everything you do. It's a wrap for this episode. So from all of us here at the Going Yard Podcast, and for Kendall Burton, I'm Dan.
And I'm Tyler. See ya.
Later.